Hello and thank you for joining me today. Before we get started, I wanted to say a quick thank you to Tiffany for inviting me to take part in this year's hop, and also to all of our wonderful sponsors. Here's a quick peek of the canvas that I'm creating today. As you can see, it's full of Prima's new Capri collection designed by Frank Garcia. I received this collection as part of my subscription from My Creative Scrapbook. I received the limited edition kits from My Creative Scrapbook, and they are beautiful. I absolutely love them, and Pam is super amazing to work with. For example, this month I thought that my kit was lost in the mail because of all the madness going on with COVID-19 and all the world gone crazy. Anyhow, I thought that my kit was lost in the mail, so I contacted her. She looked into it, and it appeared to be stuck somewhere in Kansas. So she quickly sent me out another kit. But lo and behold, the day that the second kit arrived, my first kit arrived as well. So lucky for one of you lucky viewers today, I am going to pay that forward as an extra prize for the hop. So I have the details about that in the description box below. But let's get back to this canvas. As you can see, I started with a piece of pattern paper from the collection, and I'm just adhering it to my oval canvas from Hobby Lobby. It's just a stretch canvas. I believe it's an 8x10. It's pretty sturdy. It's one of the thicker ones. But I'm just adhering it with a little bit of glossy gel and roughing up the edges just a tiny bit to make sure that it's flush against the canvas. Now, the one thing that I do that might be a little bit different than some other people's, or I don't know, maybe it's the same, but it's my personal preference. I go ahead and I put a clear coat of gesso over my whole canvas, and that's just so my paper and my canvas react the same way to all the mediums that I put across it. It's just easier for me. Maybe it makes me lazy. I don't know. But it's easier for me. So I like working on the same surface, and that's how we go. Now I'm going to adhere some plaster paste through a Finnabar stencil. I think this is last year's stencil, maybe? I'm not sure. But I'm going to put some plaster paste through my stencil randomly around the canvas. Not covering the whole thing, just here and there. Now, oddly enough, my plaster paste, which is my absolute favorite, has been drying out a little bit. Probably because I've been a little bit lazy closing my lids. But I've just been squirting just a tiny bit of water in it before I close it, and now it's almost back 100% to normal. So little tip there, save your plaster paste. Anyhow, I'm just adhering this, and then I'm going to quickly dry that. And while I used most of the limited edition kit from My Creative Scrapbook to complete this canvas, I did add some resin pieces that I created. And I created these pieces using Amazing Casting Resin, I think it's called. And it's just a quick casting resin. It's easy to use, and it cures really fast. And as you can see, I'm just using some Prima molds, a cake mold, and I think a redesign by Prima mold. And then I'm going to move not quick enough because I'm still going to lose some of that resin in the cup, but it's easy enough to use. And you got to use what you have, right? So moving on. Now I'm going to use my embossing dabber by Ranger. I love this embossing dabber. It's old. It's so old, and I use it all the time, but I love it. And I'm going to emboss this with Purely White by Lindsay Stamp Gang. It's my favorite white, and I'm almost out, as you can see, as I'm dumping this all over this chipboard. But it's my favorite white for chipboard, and that's what I'm doing here. I love this chipboard from Creative Embellishments. This actually comes in two, and there's two of them in the kit. It's a large chipboard piece, and it's so beautiful. I'm kind of depressed that I covered most of it up on the canvas, but it's so pretty. I'm glad I have another one. Anyways, I diverge. Now I'm adding a little bit of color with Blue Hawaiian Blue from Lindsay Stamp Gang. It's one of their Starbursts, so it has the shimmer in it. And I'm just using a paintbrush and then a little bit of water so I can control where my color is going, and I can leave that white space white and just have it exactly where I want it. And that's just the way that I like to do things. Not all the time, but when I'm doing something specific like this and I want to make sure that I have white space on the canvas. So now I'm just drying this before I lay my second color because I want them to remain separate and not pull together too much. My second one is a flat Fabio, and I'll have all of the colors and everything that I use in the description box below. But I am sorry, I am not going to try to pronounce this. It's an old one, and it's from Lamore Weber. Okay, moving on. You see I'm just mixing these on. These are my two favorites. Well, there's a couple more, but I like these two a lot too. Anyways, so I'm going to dry this up and dab just a tiny bit off, and that's where we're going to go. I'm going to add a little bit more color later, but this is a good base to get us started. I just love the way the color pulls up in the stencil. Now I'm going to adhere my chipboard, and I'm just using a little bit of 3D gloss gel to adhere my chipboard. As you can see, I'm using the end of my paintbrush and not my paintbrush because I have ruined so many paintbrushes using my gel. Yes, I am the lazy crafter. Anyhow, so once my chipboard is in place, I'm going to go ahead and work on my resin pieces. Now, my resin pieces I created, you saw with the mold. But what I didn't show you off camera is whenever I'm using pieces like this, and they're not the store-bought ones, so they're not like the resin pieces that you receive from Prima. I always put a clear coat of gesso on them, again, just because I like the way that the gesso reacts, and it just takes the color a lot better, especially when you're using mists and things like that. So I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do, so I put a clear coat of gesso on all the resin pieces that I'm using for this canvas. But now, right now, I'm just adding on a white metallic paint from Finnabar. It's, I think it's just white pearl. It's one of her metallics. Anyways, I'm just drying the paint in place, and it just gives it a nice little pearly shimmer. It's one of my favorite paints. I think I've been through 2 jars of it. Anyways, I'm just starting my configuration, and I'm going to start building my pieces here. So these are the 2 little corals that I created out of the cake mold that I'm adhering here with a little bit of heavy body gel. I am a gel girl, not a hot glue girl, if you guys know me. And here's the picture that I'm working with, and it is actually on the base of the embellishment packet. There's a proper word for that, and I'm sorry, my brain is gone. But anyway, so technically this is a trash to treasure project as well. But really, I like to use the cardboard from the packaging for the base of the picture because it just gives it a little bit more stability. Just a little tip. I'm going through here and trying to pick the chipboards that I'm going to use, and I'm adding a little bit of baby powder on the back of the chipboards that I pull off. Because I always use gel medium to adhere them anyways, because I like everything to stay in place and I worry about things coming off. So I just put a little bit of powder on them once I take them out of the packet, and then I just throw them back in there if I don't use them. Another tip. Gee, you guys are getting lots of my good little tips today. So I'm just pulling a couple pieces here and there, and I'm trying to start building my collage. At this point in time, honestly, you guys, I have no idea where I'm going with this, and you'll see that I'm ripping things apart and stacking them together. I've used my tiny attacher, and I've, stapled things together, and I've ripped them apart, and I'm just trying to piece together my die cuts and my little pieces of scrap paper that I've used, and I'm cutting extra paper out, and I'm fussy cutting things out, and I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew I had to get it done, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So it's kind of a jumbled mess here, but I'm just picking pieces of scrap paper out of the one sheet of paper that I cut up from this collection. And I'm just cutting all the bits and pieces that I like out of it. So I fussy cut that butterfly out, a heart, this little water piece here that I'm going to make a quick banner out of to put onto the canvas. And that's what I'm doing here. And that's really what I do with a lot of my layering. I just pick, bits and pieces of my scrap and I layer it. And that's why I don't understand why I buy so much paper, because I use so much of my scraps. I hardly have anything left out of a paper when I use it, but I guess that's why I have so much paper left in my room. Anyways, now you're going to see that I'm starting to build my collage. I'm finally figuring out where I'm going to put everything. And I'm making the commitment of gluing everything down. Actually, I've just given up and said I have to start gluing this down. So I'm starting with my base. I'm adding the banner. And I'm just trying to work with my triangle that I formed with the top part and the bottom part of the color on the bottom. So I'm just building and stacking and tucking and using a little bit of foam tape to get some dimension. I'm sorry, my foam tape's off of camera, but I'm just adding little foam bits here and there just to give it a little bit of a pop. Now I did cut that little piece off the bottom there just because I couldn't make my flower stick where I wanted it to stick. So you don't see it anyways. Actually, most of this gets buried with all the flowers. I really liked the flowers in this collection, so I used a lot of flowers. But who doesn't like flowers? So I'm just using a little bit of pieces here and there, and I'm tucking until I'm happy, and I'm ripping apart and starting over. And, this is all part of the process. And I guess I could have fast forwarded through this a little bit more. But I hate just, saying, oh, poof, movie magic, and it's done. Because it's, it's not really how it works. I get up and I start over, and I get up and I start over. And so here you guys can kind of watch me fiddle around a little bit. But I am adhering everything with 3D gloss gel. And as you can see, I've grabbed a couple of miscellaneous seashells out of a jar from my desk. And I'm just tucking them in here and there. Now I've decided that my contrasting color is going to be brown. And I'm using two Lindsay's for that as well. And they are Steampunk Sepia and Opal Sea Oats. And like I said, everything will be listed in the description box below. But this is why I like to put the clear coated gesso on my resin pieces, because the color just accepts it so much better. Now I'm adding a little bit of aged brass wax on top of that, just a tiny bit of touch. And of course, I'm completely off camera, so you can't see them at all. But that's the wax, and that's what I'm doing. So there they are. Sorry about that. Anyways, things are starting to come together now, and I'm actually feeling where the canvas is going a little bit. So now I'm just adding extra little bits here and there. Tucking some flowers in, moving things around, trying to make sure that everything's straight. Adding a couple more seashells, placing my seahorse. I'm just playing with flowers, because that's the fun part, right? And that's the good thing about working with gel and not hot glue, is you have a little bit of wiggle room. So until everything's 100% dry, you can still get away with a little bit of movement. I'm tucking extra die cuts behind my stacks, adding in butterflies. And now I'm going to go ahead and start adding some art stones with a little bit of gel medium. And this is where I always ruin my brush. I use it for the gel medium for the art stones, and then I forget to put the brush in the water every single time. Anyways, I'm just mad at myself. But here's my art stones, and I'm just sprinkling them around because they kind of go nice with the seaside kind of thing. This picture is of my daughters when we were in Tortuga, I think. Anyways, in the Caribbean. It was a couple years ago, but it's a fun picture. Anyways, I'm back to adding color because I've decided that I've covered up all my color with all my beautiful flowers, so I need to add a little bit more in. So here I am with the blue Hawaiian blue, and I'm adding that in, and then I'm going to add my second color as well. And that's just because I didn't anticipate how much I was going to add to this canvas. I was trying to keep it simple, and then I went a little overboard with all of my flowers. but I did manage to keep my white space, so I'm pretty proud of myself. So I'm just continuing to add a little bit of color here and there and moving it around with my brush, trying to make sure it doesn't get out of control. And I am trying to keep it a little bit out of the art stones because I want them to stay primarily white. I'm going to give that a quick dry, and I'm going to move on to my heavy body gesso. So this is my white heavy body gesso, and mine is an old jar, and it is thick. So it's super easy to add to flowers, but I probably should have added a clear coat of gesso to my flowers as well, because it was pretty difficult to get the gesso where I wanted on these. I typically do add the gesso to the flowers. I didn't this time because I was going to keep everything pretty simple. And then, you know, I just couldn't help myself. So here I am adding gesso, lifting each little flower and touching it with a little bit of gesso, adding it to the seashells. And I'm just trying to kind of bring everything together a little bit, because while it's all the same collection, it is a lot of different colors. So I'm just trying to tie them all in together with a little bit of gesso. So you'll see me to continue to do that all over the little bits and pieces. And that's about it with that, I think. Maybe not. Now I'm adding just a little bit of twine, and I honestly have no idea where this twine came from. It's just a brown twine. I use it on so many different projects, and I love it, but I think it's just like a kitchen string or something. It's just a tiny bit of brown twine, and it works wonderful. But now I've decided that I wanted it a little bit whiter, so I'm using a tiny sponge and a little bit of gesso, and I'm just trying to dab the areas that I'm not happy with. So I'm just adding a little bit of gesso, and it's kind of like a little bit of an eraser. Next, I added a little bit of white crackle paste just to add a little bit more texture to the canvas. I'm just using my spatula and touching the tops of my embellishments and randomly around the canvas and on the sides. It's kind of my guilty pleasure. I love my white crackle paste. It's addictive. But if you're enjoying this, please consider don't forget to give me a thumbs up, and I hope that you'll consider subscribing. Little side note there. But here I am building my tiny cluster at the bottom of the canvas, and that just completes my visible triangle. And I'm just adding a little bit of, well, it's not really journaling, but I'm at least adding the date and where we were, because this is a creating memories kind of canvas, and that's the theme of this year's hop. Well, it is a scrapbooking hop. So I wanted to make sure that I did a little bit there. Now I'm just adding a little bit of splatters, and that's just to bring everything together and just add a little bit more of a cohesive feel and cover up any little blemishes. For my white splatters, I'm using titanium white from Golden, and a little bit of water. And then for my second color, I'm using Steampunk Copper from Finnabar. It's one of her metallic paints as well. But I really want to make sure that I keep that white space, so you'll see me placing little pieces of paper, and I'm using my acetate to cover my photo that I always use. Next, you're going to see me add my last little finishing touches, a couple pieces of chipboard, a die cut or two, and then I'm going to layer my second photo on top of my photograph. I did this a lot with my scrapbooking pages. It just kind of makes the photo pop a little bit more. But that's it. That's the canvas. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you are inspired in some way today. And I know that you'll enjoy the hop. There's tons of talented artists in this hop, and you're going to have fun all day or all weekend, actually, probably. Anyways, thank you so much. Thank you to the sponsors. Don't forget to check out the description box for the details on my giveaway. And you have a great day. Bye-bye.